Here in Revere, Belle Marsh, Beachmont section. If you look across the creek, that's East Boston.
Just under the flight path of jets from Logan Airport lies Belle Marsh, the last remaining salt marsh in the city of Boston. A vital habitat, an important filter for groundwater impurities.
Think of it as a big sponge. It absorbs the rainwater, then slowly but surely lets it drip out. Good way to put it.
You might call him the old man of the marsh. Jack Markley's lived here long enough to remember when Belle Isle was a stinking, filthy dump.
Every now and then lit it on fire.
Not anymore. Along with the rest of the Mystic watershed, the marsh has made a dramatic comeback.
You look out there now, you can stand waist deep and count your toes. 10 years ago, you couldn't see 6 inches.
And Jack Markley's done his share to help it along, one piece of trash at a time.
But most of the things I pick up had been in the marsh 5 years, 10 years. They float back and forth, back and forth. How long does a bleach bottle last? Well, once you pick it up, it's gone. It's not there anymore.
Markley helped form Friends of Belle Isle Marsh, and he regularly gives tours in his old, sailless sailboat, picking up trash along the way.
The more people that are interested, the more chance we got of saving it and protecting it. It's one of the things I can leave, one legacy.
I'm leaving my family, leaving all my friends. My body's at home, but my heart's in the wind, where the clouds are like headlines on a new front page sky. My tears are salt water, and the moon's full and high. Now I know Martin Eden, he's gonna be so proud of me. There's been many before me who've been called by the sea, and I'll be up in that crow's nest, I just singing my say. Shiver me timbers, 'cause I'm a sailing away. Now the fog's lifting and the sand shifting, and I'm drifting on out. Oh, Captain Ahab, he ain't got nothing on me now. So swallow me, don't follow me. I'm traveling alone. Blue water's my daughter. I'm gonna skip like a storm. Tell her not to cry, 'cause my goodbye is written by the moon in the sky. And nobody knows me, I can't fathom my stand. Shiver me timbers, 'cause I'm a sailing away. And now the fog's lifted and the sand shifting, I'm drifting on out. Oh, Captain Ahab, I know he ain't got nothing on me now. So swallow me, don't follow me. I'm traveling along. Blue water's my daughter. I'm gonna skip like a stone, and I'm leaving my family. I'm leaving all my friends. My body's at home, but my heart's in the wind. Where the clouds are like headlines on a new front page sky. So shiver me timbers, 'cause I'm a sailing away. Ah, shiver me timbers, sailing away.
John, you want the window waste? The window waste?
All right, John Markley. I live on Belle Isle in Revere. And I kind of enjoy the marsh, and I pick up some of the trash, but I won't come ashore in the Winthrop Cemetery because it's mind-boggling. If you look right to my right, you'll see what the winter brought out. It floats out at every high tide, all over the marsh. What would you do with that mess right there? John asked me the depth out here. On a zero tide, there's about a foot, maybe a little more. On a minus tide, I go aground in the canoe. I can't get to the bridge. Years ago, people brought 30-foot lobster boats up here at low tide. And not too many years ago, like 30. There will be no creek for a while.
Jack Markley of Beachmont Revere. Jack is a lifelong Winthrop Revere resident, lives on the Marsh, has this, as you can see, beautiful spot. We're sitting on his deck with Belle Isle Inlet and Belle Isle Marsh behind us. Jack, can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with the Marsh and with the Friends of Belle Isle Marsh and how you got interested?
Yes, I think so. I moved here about 1980, moved on the Marsh. It was a swamp then. That's when things drifted down the creek, the residue of the dump and whatever. I lived here a number of years, and finally I retired and took an interest in the Marsh and started to appreciate it. I joined the Friends of Belle Isle Marsh and saw what they did. What they did right behind us was the Belle Isle Park. They were instrumental in building that. Kind of saved some of the marsh so people can use it. And later on I put a boat in the water and then a canoe, and I started paddling around the marsh and really took an interest. And down the creek, where the Winthrop Cemetery is, it used to be the Winthrop Dump. When I was a little boy there, I grew up in Winthrop in the 40s and 50s. They backed the trucks up on the marsh and dumped the trash out and lit it on fire. Occasionally they brought in a bulldozer and moved it around. No perimeter, it would drift out, go down the harbor or whatever. Well, later on they closed all the landfills and they capped off the dump and they made a cemetery out of it. They did not address the problem with the perimeter. I guess they didn't have to or they couldn't or whatever. But they're going to do that shortly because of people like the Friends of Belle Isle Marsh.
Another thing that I think people might find interesting is to talk about the Belle Isle Fish Company restoration site. You're pretty familiar with that because you've gone out there a lot during all phases of the restoration.
Yes, BIFCO, Belle Isle Fish Company, is just on this side of the old railroad bridge. It backs up to the T. At one time there was a boat club there, Belle Isle Boat Club. I don't know if it was a fish company, but they call it BIFCO, and it's City of Boston land, and I guess it was a hazardous waste site. And just this year they started to resurrect it. At what I'm familiar with, it was all a jumble of stone and concrete riprap to hold the banking. Well, they come in here this spring and they removed all that. They removed 8,000 or 10,000 yards of fill. They said it was hazardous or contaminated, and paddling out there and looking at it, I can see that it was, because when they dug into it, you saw all sorts of tires and timbers, and if that's what I could see, I wouldn't want to test what else was there. But that's all been removed, and they tell me they're going to make a natural slope and put in marsh grass, and if they're lucky it'll take hold and there'll be a pathway, it'll be open to the public. And they also tell me it's right around $1 million to do this. And it's not a very big area. And if you really wanted to see it, you could stop on the Belle Isle Bridge and look over, or you could call me up and I'd take you out in a boat and you could really see it.
Well, you know what you should talk about a little bit? What your daily routine is. I don't think people realize that you're out there every day cleaning up. And also you were just telling us about the difference in the amount of tires you take out every year.
Well, it's when I first started out there paddling around, you paddle around a few times aimlessly and you wonder why you're there. And I used to look along the bank, especially down here at what they call the key. It used to be the radio towers. Well, they call it the key now because they tell me on a flyover it looks like a key. But it's it's a berm out on the marsh, 550 foot to the side. Great big square berm, and it's right at the foot of Summer Street, and there's a path out there. If you had a mind to, take a ride down Summer Street, park under the no parking sign, and walk straight out. Walk around, and you can really enjoy the marsh. It puts you out there. Bring a cup of coffee with you. And if you want to, you can throw it on the path, and I'll pick it up later. But what I found a number of years ago, I'd paddle along there, and I saw all this trash and debris, bleach bottles, plastic bags. And I often said they should clean that up. And I was forever saying they should clean it up. That and the tires and the boat cradles. And, you know, they never did come down and clean it up. And finally it dawned on me, they is me. And maybe you. They is us. So I started picking up a little bit of it, just because it bothered me. And you know, in 5 or 6 years, I think I've made a little difference. I don't paddle around the marsh aimlessly. I paddle around and pick up trash and debris, and I find that relaxing, and I feel good about it. Started out a few years ago taking tires out of the mud. Nobody sees the creek at low tide. A lot of it's mud flats. A lot of the tires, they all drifted off the Winthrop dump. They settle in the mud. You don't see them when you're out canoeing because you're out at high tide. I go out at low tide, I saw them, they bothered me. Well, I come along with a knife, and a piece of line and a bleach bottle. Cut a little hole in the side of the tire, tie the bottle to it. Cut a big hole on the other side. And I put out 5 bottles, 5 tires, in the canoe. Maybe I walked through the mud, but I could clean that off. Then later on at high tide, I'd take Mabel with me. She's the woman that we bought the house from. She kind of stayed with the house, and we'd go out in the rowboat. And I'd pull up on the bleach bottle, cleat it off to the boat. We'd go on the other side of the boat. Now it's 17 feet and 6 feet wide. We'd jump up and down, we'd break the tire out of the mud. Pull it up, the big hole on the other side of the tire, you could flush all the mud out. Took 5 tires in. The next low tide, put out 5 more bottles. The next high tide, take 5 more tires in. I stopped counting at 100. Now I find the occasional tire. No one is throwing tires in my opinion. These things have just been there. Once you take them out, they're gone. And as far as tires go, there's a section of the marsh over by the casket company. They call it Rosie's Pond. Now, Jeff Wood, he's the site supervisor of Belle Park. He was telling me when they cleaned that up originally, that's over on the western side of the marsh, so every east wind would blow the tires in there on the big tides. Well, when the wind come out of the west, they were in the lee because of the buildings. They stayed there. He said when they first cleaned that out a number of years ago, I don't know when, they took 500 tires out of there. So what I've done is nothing. But if you look out now, if she pans out there in the mud, or you look at her video of low tide, I don't think you'll see a tire. And you don't see any bleach bottles or plastic bags on the marsh, because everything you pick up and you take out of here is gone. If you don't pick it up and take it out of here, it's just going to float around back and forth. And I find it relaxing.
Thanks, Jack. I hope you're talking about the marsh will inspire some more people to come out and just enjoy it on a day like this, either high tide or low tide.
Sure. The tide takes about 20 minutes to continue going out. Low tide at 8:45, it'll be 9:15 before the current reverses.
Did you make that oar?
Yes, I had to. They don't sell them long enough.
Yeah.
I went to the kayak people. See how deep it is?
Yeah. That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
That's at a plus tide. Can you picture what it's like at a -1.5?
No.
You notice this paddle doesn't have one blade turned?
Yeah.
That's the standard, because when it's up, I'm pushing against the air.
Oh, yeah.
So if I turned one blade, then I'd have to do this. And you know something, I'm an old dog. I didn't want to learn a new trick. And I'm in no rush.
How do I say goodbye to what we had? The good time that made us laugh, I'll wave them back. I thought we'd get but forever's gone away. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. I don't know where this road is going to lead. All I know is where we've been and what we've been through. If we get to see tomorrow, I hope it's worth all the pain. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. And I'll take with me the memories to be my sunshine after the rain. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. And I'll take with me the memory to be my sunshine after the rain. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
This machine was built in 1899, and it's still running today after 87 years. I guess what's special about this engine, it's the only one left in the country still running. It'll still perform every day when we need it.
Jack Markley is a day watch engineer and one of the men who keeps this steam engine running. It's used to pump sewage out of East Boston. But once, these engines were used in every city. They pumped water, generated electricity, and powered machine shops and manufacturing plants.
In the early 1900s, this was the power. Rudolph Diesel had just invented his engine. Gasoline and steam cars were very, very uncommon. Electric motors were here and there. You didn't see them everywhere. This was the power. This and the horse.
Old number 3 is the last steam engine left here. When heavy rain puts an extra load on the sewage system, it moves up to 45 million gallons a day. It's a triple expansion engine, which means it uses the steam once as a source of power, but then reuses it twice more for even greater efficiency. It runs on oil now, but once it could burn up to 20 tons of coal in a single shift.
I started working in this station in 1956 as a fireman in the boiler room, shoveling coal. I put on 20 pounds and took 2 inches off my waist. At that time, or just before that, they burned a ton an hour as a yearly average. 8,600 hours in a year, 8,600 tons.
The secret to keeping this machine going is simple.
You spend a lot of time on it. All of those parts wear. All of the parts are adjustable. When you run out of adjustment, you start making shims, fitting. You don't buy parts for this machine. They haven't bought parts for this machine in 40 years. You make them all. Someone has to sit down and draw them up, and the machinist has to copy them. We have our own machine shop here. And you need talented people. I consider myself a lucky man. I enjoy doing this, and they pay me. Maybe they don't pay me enough, but they pay me.
The problem with the triple expansion engine was that it used power efficiently, but not people.
To run the engine right now requires 2 men. 1 man in the boiler room and 1 man on the engine. And if you had a couple, you should have an oiler. That would be 3 men. And if you're burning coal, years ago, you had a coal tester. Now you're up to 4 men. And who wants to pay 4 men when you can put in an electric motor
and pay no man. Put it on automatic. I guess it's that simple. Dollars and cents.
Right now, number 3 still has a job to do whenever it rains. But just across the street, a new electric pumping station is being built. In a matter of years, old number 3 will lose steam once and for all. It will shut down forever.